Have you ever wondered what it's like to wake up in utter darkness when the world is still asleep? I am Brother Edric, a monk of Whitby Abbey in the 13th century, and I invite you into my day. Allow me to guide you through the silence of stone walls where every hour is measured by prayer and labor. You will experience the unhurried rhythm of life that may help you escape the bustle and find peace. Many believe that monastic life is one of unbroken solitude and serene tranquility, filled only with prayers and silence. In reality, it is far more demanding than it may seem to the outside world. And it begins long before an ordinary person would even think of waking up. My day, like every day for the past 30 years, begins deep in the night when the thick walls of Whitby Abbey are still shrouded in impenetrable darkness, and even the moon is hidden behind dense clouds. I do not know what hour it is, but I hear, somewhere far away through sleep, the first deep toll of the bell. It rings for matins, or as we call it, the morning office, the first of the 8 daily services, calling us, the brothers, to arise in prayer while the world still slumbers. At first, this bell was foreign and harsh to me, but over time it became part of me, like the beating of my own heart. I slowly rise from my hard straw bed, feeling the cool, damp air of my cell embrace my body. The chill seeps beneath my coarse woolen habit, making me shiver involuntarily. I am already 52 years old, and every morning my knees creak, my back aches from the dampness and the meager bedding. My legs, long accustomed to the constant cold, hardly feel it anymore. In the pitch darkness, I grope for the iron candlestick where a thin wax candle rests. The flame flares up, casting strange shadows on the stone walls of my small cell. Its scant light is my only guide in this pre-dawn gloom. Quietly, so as not to disturb the sleep of my neighbors, I open the creaking wooden door and step into the corridor. Here, in the monastery galleries, the air is even colder than in the cell, and it smells of damp stone, old dust, and something indefinably ancient. My candle barely disperses the darkness, and I can see only a few steps ahead. I walk slowly, listening only to the rustle of my habit and the quiet coughing of one of the brothers already heading to the church. In the main nave of the Abbey church, shadows are already gathering. Many candles are still unlit, and each new flame that appears in the brothers' hands adds a tiny spark to this boundless blackness. We take our places, kneeling on the cold stone floor. The sounds of psalms begin as a whisper in the silence, at first uncertain, then growing stronger, filling the vast space. This is a time for deep conversation with God, when the world is still, when all external noise ceases, and only the inner voice remains, connecting you to something greater. In such moments, I feel not just human, but part of something eternal, unchanging. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, by lauds, the second morning service, which follows matins, the sky begins to lighten. A barely perceptible gray hue seeps through the tall, narrow church windows, and the shadows, once deep and impenetrable, become slightly less dense. I still stand on the cold, worn stone floor, but now I can make out the outlines of the stained glass, not yet lit by the sun, but already taking on dull, muted tones. My voice, at first hoarse from the cold and early hour, now blends with the voices of the brothers, and together we sing hymns to the rising sun. These are not just words. It is as if our prayer rises to the heavens with the first rays. Through the slightly open doors or cracks in the walls, the sounds of awakening nature reach us. The gentle chirping of birds beginning their day beyond the monastery walls. In this wondrous unity, our choir and the bird's song, faith and nature, I find the strength that will sustain me throughout the day.
It is a reminder that even within the strict confines of monastic life, we remain part of a grand design where everything is interconnected and harmonious. I close my eyes for a moment, inhaling the cool morning air mixed with the lingering scent of incense from the night service. This feeling of peace and belonging is priceless. After the service, when the morning light is strong enough but not yet bright, comes the hour of silence. For me, this is the time I spend in the library, our scriptorium, a place where the wisdom of ages is kept and where we, the brothers, dedicate ourselves to copying sacred texts. There is a special atmosphere here. The air is heavy with the scent of old leather, parchment, and ink. Every step on the creaking wooden floor echoes in this solemn silence. I approach one of the tables, made of massive, dark oak, and take out a salter parchment. Its pages are yellowed with age, some edges worn from countless touches. I slowly turn them, inhaling that unique aroma that to me smells of history and eternity. My fingers, roughened by work, gently touch the ancient lines. Every word, every letter, once written by another monk's hand, seems to me a step toward wisdom. I do not simply read. I seem to absorb each word, reflecting on its meaning, on how it resonates in my own life. Sometimes I hear the scratch of a quill nearby, breaking the silence. That is Brother Godwin, the oldest among us, whose hands are stained with ink, and whose eyes, though clouded by cataracts, still see every letter. His presence is soothing, reminding me I am not alone in this work. The scratch of his pen is not just a sound. It reminds me that knowledge is eternal, passed down from generation to generation, preserved through the patience and diligence of people like us. In such moments, I feel a deep connection with those who came before me and those who will come after. This is hard but blessed work, which brings true peace and clarity to the soul.
As ancient wisdom says, know yourself and you will know the world. In this silence, among these ancient words, I learn this anew every day. Sometimes, running my finger along the yellowed lines, I feel the roughness of the parchment, sense its ancient weight. Every letter, so painstakingly written, reminds me of the invisible thread connecting us to those who once bent over these same pages. I see small corrections, erasures, as if I can hear the breath of monks who lived centuries ago. This is not just reading, but immersion in living history, where every word is filled with their labor and faith. Their reflections penetrate the centuries, becoming part of our heritage. Have you ever wondered what true food for the soul is when the body is content with little? After an hour in the library, where every parchment holds the breath of centuries, it is time for a humble meal. We, the brothers, head to the refectory, where simple bowls and mugs already stand on the long wooden tables. The air here is cool, but not as raw as at night, and smells of freshly baked, though often stale, bread. Each of us receives a piece of such bread, sometimes requiring effort to break, and a mug of barley beer. The beer, though light and not strong, warms from within, driving away the remnants of morning chill. We eat in complete silence, broken only by the measured voice of Brother Godwin, who sits at his place at the head of the table and reads aloud. Today, he reads the life of Saint Bridget of Ireland, her humble life filled with miracles and humility. His voice, low and measured, fills the space, distracting us from simple earthly needs. I listen attentively, trying to grasp every word, to imagine those distant times and deeds. These stories are our spiritual food, nourishing the soul far more than the meager bread feeds the body. Sometimes my gaze falls on Brother Thomas, a young novice sitting across from me. He does not seem fully accustomed to this strict silence. His eyes occasionally wander across the table, as if searching for something to distract him from monotony. I remember myself at his age, the same questions, the same restlessness, the same struggle with worldly thoughts. But I know that, in time, he too will find deep meaning in this simplicity. The simplicity of food teaches us gratitude for the little we have, for every piece of bread, for every sip of water. It reminds us that true wealth is not in abundance, but in the ability to be content with what we have and see it as a blessing.
After the meal, we quietly rise, each with his own thoughts, and prepare for the next stage of the day. Our stomachs may not be full, but our souls are nourished. Now comes the time I consider one of the most important and blessed in our abbey, the hours of labor in the scriptorium. After a short meal, we return to our library, which also serves as a workshop for copyists. The morning light is now brighter, and enough shines through the narrow windows to work without constant need for candles, though on gloomy days they are still necessary. My place is at one of the long oak tables, where I spend most of the day. At present, I am copying the Gospel of Luke. This is not the first time I have worked on this text, but each time it reveals itself to me anew. Every letter demands incredible patience and precision. My hand, though practiced, still feels the strain. The goose quill, which I sharpen myself each morning, must be sharp, but not so much as to scratch the parchment. The ink, which we prepare here, smells of iron and oak bark, a special, incomparable scent that has accompanied me for decades. I dip the tip of the quill into the inkwell, gather just enough, and begin to write. At first, it is a mechanical movement, but then I immerse myself in the process, and every letter, every word gains deep meaning for me. I strive not simply to copy, but to ponder each message as if passing it through myself. My fingers grow tired, sometimes numb from the long tension, and my back begins to ache from sitting still. But this fatigue is pleasant. It reminds me of the significance of the work. Sometimes I take short breaks to stretch my hands, look out the window at the gray sky or the greening hills if the weather allows. Next to me sits Brother Thomas, who is also learning to copy. His quill is not yet as steady as mine, and I see him frown, trying to make a perfectly straight line. Sometimes he sighs heavily or awkwardly drops his pen, breaking our silence. I just shake my head slightly, remembering my first years. Recently, Abbot Gilbert visited us in the scriptorium to check our work. His gaze, though stern, is fair, and it lingered on my pages. He only nodded, which for him meant approval, and moved on to Brother Thomas's table. I heard the abbot give the young novice some advice, his voice low and weighty. The thought that our work will preserve wisdom for those who come after us gives me strength and fills my heart with deep meaning. This is not just copying books, it is preserving the Word of God, spreading it in the world. Our day in the Abbey is divided not only into periods of labor, but also into strict intervals marked by the ringing of the bell, which calls us to prayer every 3 hours. It is like the breath of the day, its rhythm, helping us remember what is most important. After long hours spent copying, when my eyes begin to ache from the small script and my fingers are tired of holding the quill, the saving bell rings. This is prime, the service held around 6 in the morning, then terce at 9 and sext at noon. These short services are not just an obligation, they are an opportunity to step back from work, catch our breath, and refocus on the eternal. When the bell begins to ring, I carefully lay down my pen, close the parchment, and rise from the table. The scriptorium gradually empties, and we, the brothers, head once more to the church. The transition from the silence of the scriptorium to the silence of the church, where only our voices disturb the peace, feels like a change of state. These are short but profound pauses when we gather again to offer our prayers. In these moments, I feel the tension accumulated from painstaking work slowly fade. We sing psalms, read short passages from Scripture, and each time these words sound new, penetrating to the depths of the soul. I notice how Brother Thomas, sometimes so impatient in the scriptorium, becomes more focused here in the church. His young voice blends with ours, and in his eyes I see the reflection of sincere faith. It reminds me that, despite all external differences, inside, we all strive for the same thing. Even Abbot Gilbert, whose face is usually stern and focused on managing the abbey, seems more peaceful in these moments. He stands among us, one of the brothers, though he is the leader. These services are our common breath, our pulse. They remind us that our life, full of labor and discipline, is above all dedicated to service. They do not let us forget that physical labor, however important, is only a means, not an end in itself. After each short service, we return to our tasks with renewed strength and a clearer mind. Once again, the pen scratches, the parchment rustles, but now there is a different calm in these sounds. So our day passes, from hard work to sacred silence, from bodily fatigue to spiritual peace. The world outside the abbey walls lives by its own rules, often bustling and noisy, but here, in this holy place, time flows differently, and its rhythm is measured not by hours, but by eternity. In my former life, before I set foot on this path, I thought that satiety was necessarily abundance, and true peace was found in the absence of any cares. But here, behind these walls, I learned a different truth.
After the morning services and reading in the scriptorium, when the sun is almost at its highest point and hunger begins to make itself felt, it is time for the main meal of the day. We brothers gather again in the refectory. It is a large, long room with high ceilings, where even at noon there is a certain chill. The air is no longer as raw as at night, but its density is still felt, infused with the smells of wood, old walls, and of course the coming meal. On the long, polished dark oak tables, our bowls, simple clay ones, are already set, and mugs filled with water or, by special permission, light barley beer. Today's lunch is a thick, hearty bean stew with some dried herbs. On other days, we might have a piece of salted fish or a slice of hard cheese. But the bean stew is the most common dish, simple and filling. I take my usual place. We all sit in strict order, not breaking the silence. Our gaze is fixed on Brother Godwin's place, who again reads aloud today. His voice, low and measured, fills the space, spreading the words from the book of Isaiah. I listen closely, trying to absorb every word, to imagine the images he describes. These texts are not just reading, they are our spiritual food, nourishing the soul far more than the meager food nourishes the body. In these moments, I feel all worldly cares recede, leaving only deep concentration. The sounds of spoons striking clay bowls are perhaps the only interruption to this solemn silence. These barely audible clinks remind us of our brotherly unity, that we are all together, here in this moment, sharing both food and faith. Sometimes I watch Brother Thomas. His youthful face is focused on his bowl, but I see him occasionally glance up, as if searching for something. Or his thoughts wander far away. I remember how I too struggled with distractions at his age, with a desire to break this strict silence. But over time, as I hope he will, I learned to value it, to see not emptiness, but fullness in it.
The simplicity of the meal, its unpretentiousness, teaches us gratitude for the little we have, for every piece of bread, for every sip of water. It reminds us that true wealth is not in abundance, but in the ability to be content with what we have and see it as God's blessing. After the meal, we quietly rise, each with our own thoughts, and, bowing, leave the refectory, preparing for the next stage of the day. Our stomachs, of course, are not full to bursting, but our souls are nourished. After lunch comes the time for physical labor, which is no less important than prayer or reading. These are the afternoon chores, and for me, this most often means working in the monastery garden. I love this garden. It is located behind one of the abbey walls, and here, unlike the stone galleries, you can feel the breath of the earth and the open sky. I put on old worn leather gloves, take a spade, and head to the beds where we grow herbs. These herbs are not only for our modest kitchen, but also for medicinal needs, for preparing remedies that help us cope with ailments. Today, I have to dig new beds. The earth here is moist, heavy, but fertile. It smells of rain, if it has recently fallen, and of life, a special freshness that fills the lungs. I sink the spade into the ground, feeling the resistance, and turn over clod after clod. My back, of course, begins to ache rather quickly, but this pain, strangely, does not repel me. It reminds me that labor cleanses the soul, frees the mind from unnecessary thoughts, leaving only focus on the moment, on the movement, on the earth beneath my hands. In such moments, I do not think of sacred texts or tomorrow's prayers. I simply exist here and now, feeling the rhythm of my body, the breath of the earth. It is a kind of meditation that requires no words or chants. Sometimes, when there is little work in the garden or help is needed elsewhere, I go to the kitchen.
There, in the warmth, it smells of hearth smoke, vegetables, and something else indescribable. I take a knife and start cutting vegetables, onions, cabbage, turnips. The monotonous movement of the knife, the sound of it hitting the wooden board, the crunch of sliced vegetables, all this creates its own special rhythm. It is also a kind of moving meditation where the hands are busy with a simple, useful task, and the mind can wander, or, on the contrary, focus entirely on the task. Sometimes I see Brother Thomas, if he is also working in the garden, trying his best, but his movements are not yet as practiced as ours, the older ones. He stumbles, the spade slips, and he throws me a quick, embarrassed glance. I just smile slightly in response, understanding that this labor is also part of his path, his learning of humility and diligence. The sun gradually sinks to the west, and the shadows lengthen, reminding us of the approach of the next service. By Vespers, the evening service, the sun is almost set. Its last rays stream through the tall, pointed church windows, playing on the stained glass. I stand in the church, watching the red, blue, and gold reflections slide across the ancient stone walls, creating amazing, fleeting pictures. It is like a farewell gift from the day, which departs, giving way to night. The singing of psalms at this time sounds especially deep and soothing. Our voices, merging into a single choir, fill the space, and it seems as if the building itself vibrates with this harmony. For me, this singing is like pure water, washing away the day's fatigue, worries, and small distractions accumulated over hours of labor and reflection. Every sound, every word seems to penetrate to the very depths of the soul, calming it and preparing it for the night's rest. Brother Godwin, standing nearby, sings with his deep, slightly hoarse voice. His face, lined with wrinkles, looks especially peaceful at these moments. He seems to dissolve in the sound, giving himself entirely to prayer. The young Brother Thomas, who not long ago struggled to focus in the scriptorium or stumbled in the garden, here in the church seems to find his own peace. His voice, high and clear, sounds alongside ours, and I see him also immersed in this shared flow of faith. These are the moments when we all, regardless of age or duties, become a single whole, united by one purpose. The sense of community, of brotherhood, is especially strong when we raise our prayers together, seeing off the departing day. After Vespers comes a short conversation we call colloquium, when the abbot or one of the senior brothers may give instruction or read something edifying. This is the last opportunity for words before the great silence, which will last until morning. The world outside the abbey strives for endless noise and commotion, believing that life must be filled with constant movement and outward displays. But here, in our secluded corner, we learn to find fullness and true meaning in silence and humble service. We left the church after Vespers, and I felt the daylight finally give way, yielding to the twilight seeping into the monastery galleries. The air grew colder, heralding the coming night.
My steps, like those of the other brothers, were measured and familiar. We headed back to the rectory, but this time not for a hearty meal, but for a light, final supper before the Great Silence, which would last until morning. The rectory looked different than at noon. The light was dimmer, a few candles burned on the walls, casting trembling shadows on the long wooden tables. The atmosphere was even more peaceful than before, as if the very space was preparing for rest. On the table awaited only a piece of stale bread, cut thin, and a mug of clear water. No beer, no stew. This was the last, most modest meal of the day, meant only to sustain strength, not for enjoyment.
I took my piece of bread, feeling its hardness under my fingers, and my mug of cold water. We ate in complete silence, as always, but this evening's silence was different, deeper than during the day. It was filled with reflections on the day gone by, on labors, on prayers, on every moment we had lived. No one read aloud, no one broke the silence. Only rare, barely audible sounds, the faint crunch of bread, a quiet sip of water, and sometimes a restrained cough from one of the elder brothers. I chewed my bread slowly, tasting its simple, slightly bland flavor. The water was cold and refreshing. This emptiness in the stomach that followed such a light supper was not hunger, but rather a reminder. It reminded me that true food is not for the body, but for the spirit. Our flesh needs little to exist, but the soul requires constant nourishment, prayer, humility, labor, reflection. This reminder, which I have absorbed over many years here, helped me value every crumb, every moment, every opportunity for spiritual growth. I looked at Brother Thomas. His gaze seemed a bit lost as he looked at his small piece of bread. For him, a young man just beginning his journey, it was probably harder than for us old monks accustomed to asceticism. I saw him bring his mug to his lips several times, as if trying to fill not only his thirst, but also some inner restlessness. I remembered myself at his age, when I too sometimes felt that this simplicity was deprivation, not a path to liberation. But time and faith teach otherwise. Abbot Gilbert, sitting at the head of the table, ate as slowly and thoughtfully as all of us. There was not a trace of discontent in his face, only deep, calm acceptance. His example always served as a silent lesson for us. We sat thus until everyone finished their meal. Then, at the abbot's signal, we quietly rose and, bowing, left the refectory, heading to our cells. The Great Silence began, and its rules were unbreakable until the first bell in the morning.
Returning to my cell, I felt the silence around me grow denser, as if enveloping me. Only the rustle of my habit disturbed it as I walked down the dark corridor. I entered my cell. The only source of light, a thin wax candle I had lit in the morning, was now burning low, its flame barely flickering, ready to go out at any moment. The room was plunged into semi-darkness, and the shadows cast by the furniture grew long and blurred. This was a sign that the day was almost over. Before lying down on my hard straw bed, I had to perform the last prayer of the day, Compline, or night prayer. This service completes the daily cycle, a time for repentance, thanksgiving, and asking for protection through the night. I knelt before the wooden cross hanging on the wall. The cold of the stone seeped through my habit, but I hardly felt it. I closed my eyes and began to whisper prayers. The words I repeated day after day, year after year, sounded in my head like old good friends. They were comfort, protection, a link to something above worldly vanity. I prayed for forgiveness for all the sins committed during the day, for protection from temptations of the night, for peace for my soul and for the souls of all the brothers.
I felt the worries of the day, if there were any, slowly dissolve in this deep silence, like smoke carried away by the wind. All cares, all minor anxieties related to work or my own thoughts receded, leaving only calm and acceptance. The candle flame grew smaller, its light weaker. It seemed to reflect the fading of the day, its slow dissolution into the approaching night. At some point, the candle flickered for the last time and went out, leaving me in complete darkness. This did not frighten me, only brought a deep sense of peace. The darkness of the cell was familiar, comforting. I remained on my knees for a few more minutes, letting this darkness fully embrace me. There was nothing frightening in it, only a sense of security and closeness to the unseen.
My mind gradually cleared, preparing for the night's sleep, which would bring rest and restore strength for a new day, a new cycle. Every day ended the same way, but each time it was a new experience, a new cleansing. I felt myself part of an endless flow of time, where each day is just a small chapter in the great book of being. When I finally lay down on my hard straw bed, my body, though tired, was relaxed and my mind was calm. I closed my eyes, listening to the silence that now reigned throughout the abbey. Only the distant hoot of an owl or the rustle of wind outside the window sometimes disturbed it, but these sounds only emphasized the deep peace. So ended my day, the day of Brother Edric, monk of Whitby Abbey. It was filled with work and prayer, humility and reflection. It was simple but profound. And each time as I fell asleep, I wondered, what will the new dawn bring, and what new meaning will reveal itself to me in this endless cycle of life and faith? My day is over, from darkness to darkness, in a circle of prayer and labor. Perhaps this life seems harsh to you, but in its simplicity, I have found peace. May my story carry you into the silence of the ages, where time flows more slowly and the soul finds rest. Good night, and may the Lord keep you.